Welcome to Rejected Religion, Patreon Tier 2, The Groves of Orpheus. My guest today is Ayesha Adamo. Welcome, Ayesha.
Hello.
It is very good to be able to talk to you again.
Yes.
You're currently at Rice University working on your PhD in religion, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your project is about.
Today, I'm probably not going to talk about my project mostly, but I will give you a little bit of,
That's fine.
taste.
Just a little taste.
A little taste. So I'm doing a project that involves a lot of quantum mechanics and math stuff, and it really has to do with a substance of everything.
Okay.
So I'm kind of an ideas person, and so I'm working from a somewhat philosophical angle, although there will be history involved. It's esoteric in the sense that it's coming up with this new idea about possibly consciousness and about what's going on with cosmology in a very contemporary sense, but looking backwards as well.
Well, that sounds very intriguing. I'm anxious to read more. You've only just started on this project, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Sort of. So I just started
Okay.
here with Jeff Kripal, but previously my thesis in Amsterdam when I did my master's had to do with this as well.
Oh,
so
right. Okay.
I had a little bit of a seed already going,
Yes.
but doing it here is actually really amazing because I'm getting to work a lot with, Rice is a very strong school for STEM, for math, and for physics. So getting to work on it here is really developing the idea quite a lot. So I'm excited.
Wow. Well, it sounds really intriguing, as I said. So to get to our topic for today, you are going to be presenting a paper this April at the Program for the Evolution of Spirituality at Harvard Divinity School, wherein you'll be talking about, as you told me, the process of headlessness as inspired by Bataille and performing arts practices. So I guess we can start unpacking some concepts without giving the whole paper away here, of course. So let's first look at Georges Bataille and his interpretation of the Acéphale. And we're going to have to, of course, unpack that, what that is all about. But firstly, for the listeners, Bataille, who was born in 1897 and died in 1962, was a philosopher and an intellectual interested in surrealism. He was anti-fascist. He also founded two groups in 1937 with the goal of exploring how combinations of power and the sacred were at play in society. The first group was called the College of Sociology that gave lectures. So that was the exoteric group, so to speak. And the second group was called Acéphale. This was the esoteric secret society. Additionally, a public review by the same name, whose emblem was a headless man, was published in 1936, if my information is correct. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about this Acéphale emblem and what all of this represents.
So the emblem, first of all, was created by André Masson, and he was a surrealist artist. So he was very much a part of this group. And it's also important to recognize that Bataille had his roots in surrealism, but he separated from that movement at a certain point when surrealism was getting more committed to the revolution. And from his point of view, that was kind of a sellout, actually. They were selling themselves out to this set of ideas rather than remaining open. So that's important to keep in the mix of this idea. But so the figure itself, it reminds you actually of Renaissance art, but also you can see in it, there's a man, he's star-shaped, a bit like a pentagram, and you can see in this, there's no head. Instead of the head being where, the spirit would be in the pentagram, you have a skull. You have a skull at the groin specifically. And so the presence of the skull being there, it indicates certain things, like the rise of Kundalini is one way to take it. And so you're thinking about also death, the little death, as well as the big death, sometimes the meditations that were involved with the group Acéphale had to do with death ideas, a meditation on the joy just before death. So this was all in the mix of what was going on here. And there's a story, I mean, and we're not totally sure that it's true, that Bataille thought there should be a sacrifice in the group, and he was willing to be this human sacrifice. Oh, okay. And his friends were like, "No, don't do that, George. Like, just no." But this is the tale as it goes. Okay. So these ideas of death and regeneration and no mind, no head, are all in the mix in the symbol itself, which kind of embodies the ideas operating under what's going on with this group. And they met in the woods by this lightning-struck tree stump. And so this kind of strike of lightning, this satori, kind of idea of like a sudden flash, the shock. And the shock is a big part of surrealism. That's also a part of this whole landscape of what the symbol is all about.
I see. So this is, of course, these, when you were first telling me about this presentation, about the headlessness and stuff, I mean, my first thought went to the bornless ritual that you find in Thelema, if I'm not mistaken. I've read about this. I've never performed it, of course, but I've read about this. That's also called the headless one, the headless ritual. There's a, very long poem that goes with this. That's what it, kind of called up in me about this very complex and advanced ritual. But in other areas I remember when we were at the conference in Copenhagen for the visionary medium, that there were a lot of images that were coming up in films with decapitated people or people holding other people's decapitated heads. And that one film about, what was it called now? I forget the title. It was kind of like on the theme of Red Riding Hood, like being in the forest, remember?
Yeah.
It was very, very
so cool.
very impressive film. But there were also there was an artist there that did a lot of
Was it Gustav?
Yeah, Gustav, that's right. Whose work is basically of his body, and then his head is like replaced with other natural items such as a tree branch or an animal skull or a piece of fruit or whatever. It's a leaf or whatever it might be, things from nature. And that there was this, it just seemed to be this kind of like a theme there about this fact that your head does not necessarily have to be attached to your body for whatever reason.
For sure.
And there's these deeper ideas about that.
Yeah, no, and the naturalness of, if you are going to pull up images of that work, like the naturalness of the bark and all of that.
Yeah.
We're at the lightning struck tree stump there. There's this coming into the earth of it, which I know we're probably going to talk about with the mandrake and all this. But yeah, for my own work, especially in this particular area, I really like to draw in this idea of the body and earth. And, a lot of the currents that come out of Plato are very anti-body. It's like, body terrible, soul good, mind good, body bad. And I'm very much of the opposite ilk to that. I think the earth and getting in the soil of it is the most important part, and getting in the body and, in the blood of it, all of these fluids, this material. And, largely my physics related project has to do with, a very material kind of idea of these things and the material of the mind as a substance. So I'm all about bringing it back to that sort of thing. To circle back to you mentioned Crowley, and not to go all into the bornless ritual or anything, but in a more general sense, I've been doing some writing related to the idea of the abyss and this sort of thing. And I definitely feel like headlessness is the way of these more kind of advanced passages in that system, for sure. the idea of receptivity, of not thinking, but just receiving. In these occult practices, especially in current mystery schools, like, coming out of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, you have this idea of a magical current and a mystical current, the magical being the putting force out there, and the mystical being receiving that force, and one being defined as more masculine and the other as the feminine divine current. So I think this actual receptive feminine divine current is actually really essential to some of those very advanced states. And I would certainly associate it with headlessness, bodiness and headlessness, absolutely, and earthness as well, which isn't something that you don't quite see in Crowley, because Crowley, goes a little bit of the other way too, of that, body. But no, I like the body in the mix. So yeah, it's very cool that you brought that up.
Well, and I think it also speaks to kind of to the larger idea of the mind being the rational, logical, the ratio, and that, also with surrealism, wanting to kind of get away from that, rational type of thinking and thinking everything is, has to follow a certain logic, which surrealism does not follow any type of rational logic. So thinking more with perhaps, other symbolic concepts, such as thinking with the, feeling with the heart instead of thinking with the head, because the head is no longer there. So you're forced, as it were, to rely on other receptors, I guess, other ways of engaging. And as you were talking about being receptive and allowing something to come forth out of other senses other than just the brain, I guess you could say, which of course kind of is a weird type of thing as well, because I'm saying this out loud. The brain, not the mind, but the brain is actually controlling all of these other senses in the body. But this gets into kind of this mystical thing about how the brain could, the head could be then gone, not present anymore, but that the body could still be sensing and receiving and feeling. Anyway, I'm going on a lot.
I have a lot of ideas about where consciousness kind of collects and where it doesn't. I don't want to get into it yet, because I won't be publishing this kind of thing for a minute.
Okay. So, I understand.
But we got to put a pin in that for a future episode.
Okay, good. All right. So let's move from Bataille to George Balanchine, the famous choreographer who co-founded the New York City Ballet Company in 1948. Balanchine is most known, probably, people would recognize him for his plotless ballets and minimalist clothing. They just a lot of times just wore their practice clothes, or the costumey practice clothes anyway. And Balanchine had a famous quote, "Don't think, dear, just do." And he kind of had a reputation of not really wanting to explain things a lot to the dancers about what this actually means, this movement that you're doing. So I'm very curious as to how you are linking these two figures, Bataille and Balanchine, and this concept of the Acéphale also mixed in with that.
Well, the not thinking part is a deep meditative state. And for me, the thing that I'm linking together in a lot of my work is how this type of very heightened meditative state of no thought is actually the artist's state as well, especially performing arts, because you're in it in that moment. And certainly with ballet, it's very hard to do, as you know, because you have a ballet background, how difficult the technique is. And so to get to the point where you can abandon thought about it, where you're so in it that you can just be in the zone. I mean, that's a very high level of expertise. And so to be able to do that, and you watch especially Balanchine dancers, because the choreography is so fast and so aggressively executed. You watch someone like Tyler Peck doing like a concerto barocco, or like, very speedy variations and moments in that choreography. It's totally breathtaking. And, if you actually took the time to think about the steps, there's no way you could do them. If you thought you couldn't do it. Like, I remember also seeing a new, quite recent choreographer, Lauren Lovett, do her premiere this is before the pandemic at New York City Ballet, and her choreography was just so fast, and it had these like heel slides and all of these things that you're like, are they going to make it? Which is why I love seeing the New York City Ballet, because you're like, is it going to be all right?
Yeah.
I'm just not even sure. And this is the essence of don't think, just do. And this is such a high level of being in the present moment that, to do it any other way is impossible. So this is headlessness. You have to have headlessness to be able to do these things. And to get to that, kind of Ubermensch level of execution, which, we see in those types of performances. It also, very frequently, I reference my acting teacher, Win Handman. He's kind of a legend. There's actually a wonderful documentary, which I always like to promote on Netflix, called It Takes a Lunatic, about his life and his the American Place Theater, which really established off-Broadway theater in New York in a very powerful way and broke a lot of boundaries. So he always talks about in class acting with the top off. And it's really when your head is not a part of it, when the character is just so channeled through you that all the decisions you make are the characters. And afterwards, you don't know what just happened. A good performance, and this because you know how this works. When you've done a great performance, you have no idea what you just did afterwards. There's just this fuzz and this, So this state is something I'm very interested in my research, and it comes up again and again in all of the many areas I'm spread out over. This is definitely a central theme.
Yeah, are you going to make this presentation? Are you going to write an article about this afterwards?
I hope to. I do think, I'm not 100% sure, but they might be doing a Zoom thing with this conference. So people might be able to tune in. But article-wise, definitely possible.
Okay.
Some of these ideas are in my Hakim Bey article a little bit, and I know I'll be exploring them more. Also in the Fenris Wolf, the conference that we met at in Copenhagen, my writing in there is related to some of these ideas.
All right. I'll be sure to put that also in the program notes so that people can check that out. And as I'm asking now about all your publications, are the article that you sent me, The League of Endarkment, is that also publicly available? Can I share that? Okay, good.
Yeah, it's behind a paywall, but it's,
But for the Patreons, can I share the article or no?
Oh, you can share it. Share it completely.
Okay.
You mean share the document itself?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's out of embargo. I think at this point I can put it on my academia.edu. I've been holding off because they have embargo on these things sometimes.
Yeah. That's why I'm asking.
But it's been enough time, I think, that I'm allowed to do that.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So yeah.
Do you want me to wait for your signal before sharing that, or just give the link to your academia page?
I think I can just put it on the academia page, and I'll send you the link for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I really thought your article was beautifully written. I was just amazed. I rarely have that with academic work, that there's so much poetry in your work. I found it to be, I really, there was one part that you were talking about how women were involved, and I just thought it was so touching. I almost cried. And I'm not joking here. I rarely have that feeling with academic work.
I am so happy. Like that's everything to me, because that's why I, do it. Really, that's my whole reason for doing that. And I'm a big proponent of writing in a way that has this kind of feeling and, gets through in this way.
Very poetic quality to it. It wasn't that kind of that, you're kind of like, oh God, this is going to be a dry article or a dry chapter. And I'm like, oh gosh, got to get through this. No, I didn't have that at all. I was really, really, really touched a lot of times with what you were saying.